Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the FAC Live show. Today, we will be discussing how women impact digital technology across the Caribbean. We'll be right back after this. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to First Atlantic Commerce. Here on the FAC Live show, we cover all things e-commerce in the Caribbean, and our guests will be joining us from all over the world and generously share their experience, knowledge, and insight into the digital world and how we operate within it. Those of you that are joining from LinkedIn and YouTube, thank you. Please don't forget to like and follow our page and to continue seeing content that will help you grow your business online. So, as the astute ones of you will notice, we have turned the tables a little bit today. I am not Pauline Joseph, and we have the great privilege on International Women's Day to feature 3 female entrepreneurs in honor of International Women's Day: Pauline Joseph, Ingrid Riley, and Michele Marius. So you will be accustomed to seeing Pauline host the show, and I'm really not sure I'm going to be able to fill her shoes properly, but I'm going to do my best today, so please bear with me. She is the co-host of FAC Live, but she is wearing another cap today, and she is one of our esteemed panelists, and I'm very pleased to see her here. She is the owner of a digital agency called AC Marketing Caribbean that we have had the pleasure with working with for a long time, and is the LinkedIn local Caribbean host. Some of her professional achievements include being a beta user for LinkedIn's events and live products. She's also created a non-profit 868 triathlon, which hopefully we'll hear a little bit about today, and hosting a podcast live from the Caribbean, just to name a few. Hi, Pauline. How are we doing today?
Hi, this is so weird. Well done,
It
Chris.
is.
And I must say, shout out to you for actually initiating this, because in typical female fashion, when we were organizing this event, I didn't even think to suggest myself, but thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, and it was one of my first thoughts, so thank you for joining us. So additionally, we have Ingrid Riley on the show. She's behind SiliconCaribe, a news source and information source that I personally have read and digested and enjoyed for many years now. And SiliconCaribe is the trailblazing and disruptive digital media brand that kickstarted the tech startup scene in Jamaica, and has been influencing on growing the Caribbean tech ecosystem and digital Caribbean. Welcome to the FAC Live show, Ingrid.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Well, it's great to see you again. Obviously, we've never met actually in person, I don't think, but
we have not yet.
Several of these together. But thank you for joining us.
Yes.
And last and not least, we welcome Michele Marius, who I have had the pleasure of meeting in Kingston when I was last able to travel. She is currently the director of ICT Pulse Consulting Limited, a research and advisory firm based in Jamaica that specializes in a broad range of ICT and telecommunications issues. She's also the founder of Project Calls, an online platform that correlates tender opportunities from across the Caribbean region. Happy International Women's Day, Michele. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Excellent. So if any of the pre-show is anything to go by, this is going to be a very lively discussion. And I'm looking forward to this immensely. So let's jump straight in. So we ended with Michele there, and we're going to go straight to you with the first question. So in your opinion, what is digital technology adoption?
Well, it's really about, especially in the business context, but it could be even wider in terms of just individual use. And it really is about how business in this context leverages technology in order to optimize its systems and processes. And I think sometimes, especially when we look at and hear the words, digital technology adoption or digital adoption, we think about it just from use. So, for example, if an organization decides to introduce some sort of new system or process or equipment or something, but I think we need to take it further and really look at how is it benefiting the business? Is it making the process, optimizing processes? Is it making a difference in terms of customers and the customer experience as well?
Okay, interesting. And then, so I'm going to bounce over to Ingrid here on that point. So, in your opinion, how well do you think the Caribbean is doing in terms of digital adoption?
Well, how I see digital adoption, I definitely look at it from the business side for sure, but I look at it from the point of digital culture. How digital entrepreneurship. That's been my focus for the past 15 or so years, and for me, it's the culture is I think is underrated. The culture, I think, is underestimated. And yes, we all know about the early adopters and the laggards and that kind of a thing. But I'm always very excited and have been excited for the past 15 years to see the level of digital culture that's been pulsing across the region. And for me, that means people are aware of certain things that are happening. They're using it for their personal use as well as to start new businesses or new careers. And just around that, I'm excited to see that our digital culture curve is definitely increasing. When it comes to businesses, funny enough, businesses, I think, have actually been somewhat behind the curve, behind digitally savvy consumers in terms of really understanding what they need to do and how they need to do it. In some respects and in some sectors, it's been the consumers that have actually been leading the charge in terms of digital adoption. Now, this is what we want. This is what we've experienced elsewhere, and this is what we want from you as a business, or we're going to go elsewhere. So that's kind of how it's been percolating in my head over these last couple of years.
And do you think that businesses are listening to that? We're all on our phones. We're all using the technology. Are they paying attention?
They usually pay attention when it starts to hurt their bottom line, or when a new competitor comes to start nipping at their heels. And I think now, because we've had this very intense 2 years of this pandemic, and it has actually accelerated so much. And again, the consumers have led the charge, and of course the businesses have had no choice but to adapt. And the ones who don't or do it slowly, or the ones who are thinking that we're going to go back to the good old days, will basically fizzle out and become irrelevant. That's just the reality.
Yeah, no, I would certainly agree with you on that. And turning that over to Pauline and for your thoughts on that, but also I think that ties into the next question really, in terms of the overall benefits of the digital technology adoption within the region, because one of the reasons that we engaged with Pauline and her company was really to improve the messaging, right?
Yeah.
I know personally, I have been running around the Caribbean for more years than I care to mention now, closer to 20. And it still amazes me that there's people that don't understand the options that are available in terms of sort of payments, for example, which is our specific area.
Mm-hmm.
So, Pauline, what are your thoughts on the first question in terms of how you see digital adoption and how you see that progressing within the Caribbean?
Well, firstly, when Michele spoke about digital adoption, I just kept thinking about automation, because we have this fear of what digital looks like. Because I always say, I blame the movie Terminator 1 through 4, where there's this fear of what digital means, but it's really just to ease our day-to-day lives. And there's history showing that when the ATM was first introduced into the financial world, everybody was hemming and hawing, going outside with placards, this is going to ruin our lives. But at the end of the day, bank tellers shifted their workload to something else. So I think there's this fair culture for those within the private sector, public sector. But what Ingrid said there also was so interesting, because the data shows as consumers, I look at the data every year, and Amazon is the top visited website across the Caribbean when it comes to e-commerce.
Absolutely.
Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad. So as consumers, we have expectations. We know what we want. And I could tell you, when I going away, it's not to tell anybody, because it's like, go get this for me. I'm going to send it to the address, because we're accustomed to that already.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Ingrid said it perfectly, and it's a little bit kind of depressing in a sense, because they have folks that will fizzle out, but at the end of the day, as consumers, we want what we want.
Absolutely.
So taking that to Michele then, and Amazon being obviously the number one example, what would you say to people within the region that's saying, well, I'm not going to do this because Amazon does everything correctly. It's fine. Everybody uses it. It's number one site that's visited. Why should I invest in this and grow something, domestically, locally within the region, when there's this, 500-pound, gorilla sitting over there that's gobbling everything up?
Well, I guess it depends on what they want to do, because I think I think a point that we sometimes miss is the fact that if we have a unique product, the world may want it, and not necessarily just be thinking of the local market and those who are looking to buy, stuff on Amazon. But I think depending on the product that one wants to sell, or it could be a service as well, granted not necessarily in the context of Amazon, but I think that we have very unique attributes. We have lots of different, cultural as well as local, unique products that we can leverage. And there is a market for it internationally. So one may actually find that you will use Amazon to your advantage and you sell through Amazon, although you're here in the region. So I think if one wants to try and beat Amazon at their own game, then that probably is a losing battle. But I think certainly knowing what your product is and what makes it unique, and the fact that there most likely is a market for it wider than where you are in the Caribbean, I think that could make all the difference.
And let's look at the fact that right now, I think there are a little bit over 20 unique Caribbean-focused marketplaces that allow artisans, merchants to sell their products to locals as well as to regional people, as well as to in some respects internationally. And what I see, so without question that Amazon can be almost like a proof of desire that Caribbean people are at ease buying things that they want, or buying things that they're familiar with because of their travels, or because of migration and things being sent back to them. But what I've been seeing, especially on over the last 2 years, I think again accelerated by the pandemic, is that we're seeing a lot of these micro individuals who are especially based on Instagram, and what we're seeing is that they're selling directly to consumer. They're like pop-up shops, or they're pop-up unique food products or services, and they're doing ridiculously well. So what is telling us that, fine, yes, we know, we're familiar with Amazon, we trust Amazon. We have these marketplaces that are presenting an opportunity for Caribbean sellers to meet Caribbean consumers in the region as well as outside the region. And we also have another level where we have these micro entrepreneurs who are leveraging the digital platforms, and the people are gobbling them up. I mean, there's this woman that started out selling bread puddings, and she'll just simply put them up and she'll sell out. There are others who put up, all different kinds of food. They put up their menu and they're sell out. So the consumers are very savvy, because again, they want what they want, and whether through reading, through their peers, through their families, whatever it is, this is what they want. And so the businesses that are nimble, that actually listen, that actually use the data, that actually have a pulse on the digital consumer will win. Because there's a saying that says, he or she who knows the consumer best will always win. And so that's kind of where, that's why I'm excited to see the micro entrepreneurs, and are primarily women, by the way, that are actually doing some very interesting things in that space.
I'd like to add to the conversation from a marketing perspective, because I find I see this conversation that, Chris initially started with, well, Amazon's doing it. What's the point of me joining? And one thing that we've realized is within the marketing space, we're getting more and more tailored as customers. So Amazon is so huge.
Yeah.
And guess what? You now have influencers within Amazon selling products.
Yes.
You look at, like, I'm going to go beyond something that nobody likes to talk about, online dating. Tinder started with a guy and his friends, and his partner, who eventually realized it wasn't the work culture for her, started Bumble. So, and she just released the IPO, and it's a multi-million-dollar company. So this idea of, dating for everybody and then dating specifically for women. So as consumers, you could see it in the data. We want to be spoken directly to.
Absolutely.
So if you selling me baby diapers and baby formula, I'm not on you, right? If you're trying to sell me new bike wheels and trying to make sure I have nutrition for my next Ironman, that's what I want to see. And I think that's the conversation Ingrid was talking about, because you have to understand the consumers, and consumers are giving you the data because that's where we spend most of our time.
Yeah. But you see, a lot of Caribbean businesses are allergic to data. They are allergic to data because they're scared. They're either scared to figure out that, oh my God, this product is dead, and is no longer, desired by their consumers. Or, my God, I am not winning as I thought I was winning. And I'm going to have to, Lord, I'm going to have to go spend money to go learn, to go do new things, to craft new products, to maybe hire new people. And so there's an inherent, sometimes I wonder, because I look at it here, especially in Jamaica, where a number of key businesses are family owned. And they've been doing very well for generations, and they just keep doing the same old, and they're afraid of doing anything digital or whatever. There's we're going to put up 2 patty shops over there and 1 bread shop over there, and people always come. And people, right now in Jamaica, I don't need to go to a patty shop. I just simply go online on quickcart.com and have the patty come to me. And so they're like, people really want that? Yes. Because we don't have time to go and join the long line and wait 20 minutes because the patty run out, and you have to wait until the patty bake and come out again. That kind of a thing. So it's going to be interesting. I find that the family-owned businesses tend to be even more digitally, averse and slow to change. And we have to kind of look at that across the region, both family businesses, certain legacy businesses that have always done what they've done for decades. And so now they are almost upset that they're going to actually tweak and change and try new things. But I always say, you touch somebody's pocket and they will move with alacrity. That's my thing.
Very good. Yeah, no, absolutely. And so, I'm really actually enthused to hear that desire to want to make that change to market locally, to make that change and to want people to actually sort of understand what people want opposed to what you think they want. And so, Michele, from where you sit, do you think that international companies that are selling into the region are doing a good or a bad job in customizing their content for the region?
Wow. I don't understand how come I'm getting all of these difficult questions for us.
I'm going to give that to everybody too.
Okay. That's a very interesting question. And I will probably initially say no, because I think oftentimes, and especially, when I'm talking Caribbean, I'm thinking more like the CARICOM region. So all of the islands and some of the countries in Latin America and South America. And the reason why is that oftentimes we are lumped into like Latin America and the Caribbean, even in terms of international businesses and how they, divvy up the regions and so on. And I guess when you look at it, the English-speaking Caribbean in particular, I mean, we probably have maybe about 5 million, maybe no more than 6 million people. But Cuba, for example, I think has at least 11 or something. Haiti as well. But just to say that, oftentimes when we are lumped in with Latin America and the Caribbean, we are, in terms of numbers, a very minute, portion of that. And so you find that we are not necessarily catered to specifically, although for all intents and purposes, our spending power is incredible. I think one of the things, for example, that I am aware of, especially like, historically, a lot of these international businesses like the banks, the telecommunications companies that have been in the region and have been in the region for over 100 years, the reasons why they're still here is because we have been very, very profitable. I mean, for some of the banks, I mean, there was a time when 40% of their profits came from the Caribbean region, and we're talking primarily just the English-speaking Caribbean, and the same for telecommunications companies as well. So I think that in what tends to happen is that we get lumped into Latin America and the Caribbean, and then only perhaps if the companies themselves are probably have enough knowledge of the region and understand the region, are they willing then to invest more specifically in Caribbean countries?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, so we're going to go to a break after I leveled this one at everybody else, just so Michele doesn't feel.
Yeah, because I have some. I'm just like, I'm ready.
Well, absolutely. Well, and Pauline, maybe because the LAC, the C is always very small when it comes to when we talk about the LAC, right? Any stats, resource, everything. But in terms of if we just focus in on the Caribbean there, to that same question, how important is it that we understand that the Caribbean in itself is still, there's still so many subsections within that. Like, if I'm a Trinidadian company and then I'm suddenly going to start selling to Jamaica, how important is it that I recognize that and not just think it's the Caribbean?
Just a question for me, right?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Well, it's interesting because I find that's such a valid question. And I think now is the time, I always say now is the best time to be unemployed or an entrepreneur, because the data is there and the effort is not that great as it used to be. In terms of having to jump on a plane and go and figure out a culture, you're literally finding the footprint of a culture online. So it really irks me when I see ads in Spanish. And I know, right, that there are people who speak Spanish in Trinidad and Tobago right now. I know there are people that speak Spanish across the Caribbean. The thing is, my data is really there and it's clear. All my stuff is in English. So somebody got a job and didn't do the work, because the return on investment in the Caribbean, as Michele rightfully said, I mean, to me, it's a low output kind of situation when it comes to the running ads, creating content, and the return on investment is extremely high. But unfortunately, we get lumped under, the Latin space because we are relatively tiny in the grand scheme of things. And then we also have this identity crisis thing where everybody thinks the Caribbean is the same. But if you're watching this from outside the Caribbean, you realize I have a different accent than my panel guests. So it really just takes a little bit of research online. And as Ingrid rightfully pointed out, don't be allergic to data. It's all there.
Yeah. Here's my thing is that I just believe that a lot of it's a cultural thing from when certain companies are entering the Caribbean space. I think it's cultural in terms, it's a laziness, and I've had to put some, some brands, feet against the fire, from the international development agencies to companies like Microsoft and AWS and Huawei, and you just simply ask them the tough questions. Without question, the Caribbean in terms of numbers is small. But 44 million people plus our diaspora maybe get to 100 million. That is a drop in the bucket when you look at the Latin American market and their diaspora. I totally get it. In terms of if you're just looking at raw numbers, we're small. But when you look at other scenarios like influence and buying power and or proclivity to want certain things, then I think the Caribbean needs to be looked at in a more in a better way. And so the companies tend to come with the one size fit all to the Caribbean, that this is what we're going to push and all that. What has happened is that there's now an interesting sort of a competition between like Microsoft and AWS and Huawei in the region, because they realize that oh my goodness, people are a little bit more savvy. They, the internet works in that part of the world as well, so they have access to information that they can actually compare things and want different things. So they realize that they've had to become a little bit more proactive in realizing that the Caribbean is not generic. Definitely, even within the Caribbean, is not generic, and their cultural differences, the cultural desires, the level of savvy that's there is always seem to take them by surprise, and I think that is also slightly racist and also a little bit just disingenuous, because the island people, the island people, they're not very exposed, because that is where we go for the vacation, and that is one of the reasons why I'm so grateful for this, and for people like Michele and Paul, to just simply put out new stories that listen, the Caribbean is not a monolith, and that this is still a very viable market, a very profitable market, and that we ought to be treated accordingly.
But Ingrid,
I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah.
Sorry, I wanted to ask a question based on what Ingrid just said. But Ingrid, then, do you think, though, that we are victim of our own success, especially since we market ourselves as tourist destinations? So, island time and no problem and all of these sorts of things. And here it is that, yes, we have done a very good job in selling ourselves, as tourist destinations. Yes. But then we turn around and find that we get, bit in the butt because,
without question, because our history says that basically that we're the Caribbean and the islands, this is where people come to vacation, and that's been our thing, that we've just simply, the politicians and the businesses have positioned us as this is where the world comes to vacation, not to do business. So while that narrative and those stories have been loud for decades, I think it is now up to us, people like us here, people who are listening and watching elsewhere, to change that narrative by creating and amplifying new stories. That people who live here also have a brain. We also innovate. We also are entrepreneurs. We also are savvy digitally. I think the more that we have money coming into creating and amplifying those stories, the more that we have platforms that we can distribute those stories, we can sort of change the narrative and balance the narrative. That's fine. Come and smoke your weed and go get a tan and do whatever it is that you want to do on vacation. Fantastic. But don't you dare come into our region and think that we are less smart, less savvy, less entrepreneurial, or less digital than where you're coming from.
I'd also like to ask, because that conversation is one that, because I have Barbados and Trinidad, right? So the background there. But when people think of Trinidad, they think literally of kidnapping. This is even within the Caribbean. So I was in Grenada. They're like, I would never go to Trinidad because they, we'll get kidnapped. And when you look at what people are searching for internationally in Google Trends when it comes to Trinidad, the first thing that comes up is the media, right? So what sells? Somebody shot somebody trying to get into their house a couple weeks ago. That makes the front of the page. And literally that is Trinidad and Tobago's brand to the world, with just a little hint of there of oil. So the question is too, because they themselves, the media, controls how we are seen, and they're fighting with the digital space because, like Ingrid mentioned earlier, it's this legacy company and they're not investing in the infrastructure digitally. So what happens is we have this very I always say I praise Jamaica for their branding because all the Caribbean can learn from it. At least come and spend your money. We're not even there. We're not even there. Like, you know, and it's something that I find our stories are not being told, and the people who want to tell stories don't have necessarily the financial backing of these big media companies. So it's like a catch-22. I'm conflicted by it.
I understand why you're conflicted by it, which is why I'm still doing what I'm doing with SiliconCaribe, which is why I'm glad that Michele is doing what we're doing. And listen, we're open to be invested in, God knows.
Yes.
Not only invested in, but I've had people approach us to partner as well, because that is really the essence of one of the reasons why we do what we do, because we simply must create those stories and we must amplify those stories. I mean, it's International Women's Day, and it's just last year. I mean, I even feel shame. The fact that it's just last year. I've been in this game for 15 years, and it's just last year I decided to create the Caribbean Women in Tech Top 50 list. And if you go to CaribbeanTechWomen.com, you'll see that. And I was like, oh my God, why was it a surprise to me, or why was I late to the game in amplifying my own people, that women in tech? And I believe that, and one of the reasons why I stay in the media space is that because I did that whole assessment of media and the legacy of media across the region. I looked at who owned what in terms of those newspapers and radio stations. My God, in some ways, we're still on the plantation. And when right? And yeah, I'm sorry. I'm typically this direct. But anyway,
no, I say oh geez because I agree. I understand.
That's why we invited you on.
I completely understand.
For those who don't know me, right? But and that is why I've been urging all whether you do TikTok, IG, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, podcasts, a blog, whatever it is, please do not just simply focus on the song and dance aspect of the Caribbean in terms of the entertainment. But my God, can we actually put out there the business of our creativity, the business of our innovation, the business of what women are doing, the business of even the business of tourism and all the the various things that are changing there because of digital. So I just believe that a lot more money, a lot more attention, a lot more. I just want a lot of us media entrepreneurs to simply do more, so to balance out that narrative and to change that narrative about what is the Caribbean. And so we can amplify those stories about the Caribbean that is beyond the beach.
Okay. So that's a perfect time for us to take a short break, very short break. And we have to go to break because otherwise I'm going to get fired from my first hosting job. But as a segue into that, when we come back, we're going to be talking about the role you believe women have to play and do play within the digital space within the Caribbean. So please don't go anywhere. Come back. We will be back in about 30 seconds. Okay, we are back and welcome back to the FAC live show where we talk about all things technology and digital within the Caribbean. If you are just joining us, we are joined by Pauline Joseph, Ingrid Riley, and Michele Marius, who I have all personally known for a number of years as innovators in the digital space within the Caribbean. So we've had a very lively discussion so far, which is fantastic. A lot of good information. And we're going to really, on International Women's Day, we are really going to get into the crux of it now. And Pauline, I'm going to start with you. So Michele, I'm not going to start with you this time. So you get a bit of time to think about this one. But so Pauline, you and I discussed this a little bit over the years as well in terms of, but what do you believe the current role and the future role that women have to play within the digital and technology space within the Caribbean?
Well, I need to start with data because that's how I live and breathe. And based on what we see online, women are the ones taking risk. And when it comes to activities and being able to try new things, especially from a female perspective, a female customer, because that's where traditionally in marketing space, that's where the buying power is. You see women taking risk and trying. And if I'm to really be honest with myself and look in the mirror, I'm one of those. And when it comes to the digital space, and especially in entrepreneurship in the Caribbean, I'm seeing a lot of women in the services space. So you have a lot of bloggers, even when I'm utilizing our space of content creators, we have people using the technologies and allowing themselves to try and fail, which has been a problem in the past because we have this overwhelming feeling of, if I try this new technology, it's not going to work. And that's it. I'm never going to do this again. But based on what we're seeing people trying, and when they're failing, hey, me, they continue. And I think it's extremely important, especially now what has happened over the last 2 years with the pandemic. When it comes to businesses, that digital adoption is important for balancing work-life balance as well, and being able to use the technologies like the Microsoft and the AWSs of the world, where the IT space and department need to support, and being able to manage individuals to say, hey, this is the infrastructure, digital infrastructure we have created for the company that will allow people to not just work from home, but manage their kids. And at the end of the day, the responsibility from a society's perspective is usually on the woman, let's be frank. And having that digital adoption is extremely important for businesses to succeed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And Ingrid, I'm gonna roll straight into you on that one.
So I don't remember the question.
so basically
my fault. Sorry, I rambled.
What do you believe is the role that women currently play and can play in the digital adoption in the Caribbean?
So I'm going to marry a couple of things here. So every time I get a chance to speak to women or we're in these kind of forums, I always want to share a little bit of information. Women represent the largest disruptive force in business. This is a quote from this article written by Danielle Kayembe. The article title is called "The Silent Rise of the Female-Driven Economy." Please Google it and please read it twice, both in terms of women and men. In there, she has a couple of interesting gems, which actually reflects and supports what Paula just said. The power of decision-making by women. Women globally control $36 trillion in total wealth. Women make 70% of the major financial decisions for themselves and their families, including in industries like auto, home, and investment. Yet shockingly, not so shockingly, there are products and services that are still lacking, that are actually catering to our needs and our dreams, right? So it leaves, and that while that has been increasing slowly, there is still a glaring lack in that area. But of course, it means that there's a fantastic opportunity for us to move in this direction. For me, right now, that in terms of digital adoption, in terms of digital awareness, in terms of digital opportunity, for me, I need women in crypto and fintech. I need Caribbean women in crypto and fintech. I need Black women in crypto and fintech. And here's why. There's this email newsletter that I subscribe to by this written by this guy, this Indian American tech entrepreneur and investor called Shan Puri. And he says, there's a quote in that email that I pulled out, and I've been distributing as much as I can. And he says, if women don't get into crypto, they're currently only investing or in that space at half the rate as men. If they don't get into crypto, fintech, then the wealth balance won't change in the next 10 to 20 years. So this whole Web3, blockchain, NFTs, augmented reality, crypto space is going to be the framework in which how the world works and operates in the future. And so I'm asking women who are listening to this to please open yourself to learning, open yourself to experimenting, open yourself to failing, open yourself to asking for help, to collaborating, whatever it is, and to get into this space. This is the space that is bubbling up right now. This is about women in digital, women in tech on different levels, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're taking a job, whether you're investing. That's what I want to basically put on a table right now in terms of you thinking about digital adoption and digital opportunity. And so I'll be quiet right now.
So actually, and I just want to tack on to that as well, because I agree with a lot of what you said there in terms of crypto and blockchain. But where would you direct people to go to get that information, to start that learning, to really bring that into their everyday life?
Thank you for saying that, because I was getting something ready for International Women's Day, and it's not quite ready. But if you keep watching at SiliconCaribe.com, we're going to be doing two things. One, we are coming out with our This Week in Caribbean Tech weekly podcast and newsletter. And a segment in that podcast and newsletter every week that's going to be coming out every Friday, as of this Friday, the 11th, is going to have a section dedicated to the future of Caribbean money, and the opportunities within blockchain and crypto and fintech. And we're going to be specifically putting in there information about trends and opportunities in the space. And we're going to be amplifying what women are doing in this space, because there are Caribbean women. There right now, I know at least 5 Caribbean women who are crypto millionaires. I know other Caribbean women who are investing in that space, who are learning in that space. And thankfully, I have their permission to amplify those stories. And they're going to be the sources, some of the sources of information that people can get that kind of a data. But apart from that, good old Google. Just until we get something that is specific to Caribbean, which is something that SiliconCaribe is going to be doing, and I'm sure Michele has done and will continue to do at ICT Pulse as well, then just simply Google. There's a wonderful bunch of resources out there, but I'd like to point to milkroad.com. I think it's a very excellent way for people who just kind of getting to know, are curious about it in terms of trying to understand what is what. Gary Vaynerchuk, and yes, these are men so far. Gary Vaynerchuk, and also there is this really cool young lady called Crypto Casey, who is on YouTube, who again is brilliant at taking what seemingly very complex concepts and actually making them very, very easy to understand and relatable, especially in everyday life. So those are my 3 resources outside of, please keep your watch on SiliconCaribe.com. We're coming with some really cool stuff that you can look at.
Okay, great. Well, that's a perfect segue back to Michele, because I was also going to say ICT Pulse. I just read her article the other day about the challenges that the Dcash has had recently, and I read it every time it comes out as well, actually. So, so Michele, on that front, what are your thoughts about the role that women are playing and can play in the digital transformation of the Caribbean?
Well, I mean, Pauline and Ingrid have given so many good examples, and certainly I think I've shared a lot of the things that I would have shared. I think for me, at least what I want to emphasize is really at the household level, because I think that we, especially in the Caribbean, where we tend to have a lot of single mothers, mothers being the primary caregiver for their children, and heading up and leading the household in many different ways, even if there is a partner involved. And I think that as Ingrid was saying, women are making considerable decisions, and in terms of the financial implications, but also in terms of just the breadth of the decisions that they're making for themselves and their families. And to the extent that I think that women can become more empowered digitally, I think it augurs well for the region, especially because I think, especially in our current day and age, where I guess to varying degrees across the region, women are finding themselves in positions of power more than they had before. And thus, I think that as we progress, it's going to be just even more important for women to be digitally empowered as well, as because it also has an impact on how their families are going to engage with technology, and thus, the extent to which their children are set up for the future, because we cannot necessarily expect everything to be happening in the classroom. And certainly, I think coming out of the pandemic and all of the challenges that education has experienced, there are going to be a couple of cohorts of students who are going to be deeply affected by that. And I think that there needs to be more happening in the home, and oftentimes women are the ones who are taking the lead in that arena.
Yeah, for sure. And just on the the resources part, I would agree. YouTube is definitely your friend. I'm in the payment space for a very long time, and crypto and blockchain is complicated. But depending on how you learn, I'm a very visual learner, so YouTube is fantastic. Coursera, I've done crypto and blockchain courses on there. Really good resources from that front, and actually and International Women's Day, the Coursera blockchain and crypto courses are all taught by women from Wharton, actually. So I would recommend those for sure.
Fantastic.
So going on to the next question, I'm going to ask you all to get out your crystal balls and say, where, and I'm going to go back up to, well, actually, Michele, I'm going to start with you again. I know we just heard from you, but we're going to go reverse the order. But where would you're having a lot of conversations every day, with a lot of partners, providers, customers, international or domestic companies. Where do you think we're going, from a regional perspective when it comes to digital technology?
All right. I guess for my poor crystal ball, I'm not sure whether or not it's up to that task. But I think I think we're certainly better than where we were 2 years ago, but we're certainly not where we need to be, because as on ICT Pulse, at least this year, I've been having quite a number of conversations on fintech in the region. I'm also looking at Web 3.0, as well as just a lot of things are happening globally. And even as Ingrid had said, we have whatever might be the metaverse at this point in time, blockchain and the ranges of applications that it is beginning to become a critical building block for, and therefore is rewriting how certain sorts of systems and processes operate. And I feel as if we are not we haven't gotten to that point yet, and to some degree we are not even thinking along the lines that I think we need to begin to embrace those things, and that has me worried, because I think the next 5 years are going to be so critical, and the things that we are focusing on, we haven't even begun to position ourselves for what is coming down the pipe.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's an interesting point. That it is changing so rapidly.
Yep.
How do we predict it? So, Pauline, what are your thoughts on
that? Just kind of rub the crystal ball there for a second. I think what Ingrid said earlier about the consumers being tech savvy I think is an important point when it comes to the future, because there's a few financial roadblocks when it comes to being an entrepreneur in the Caribbean. Having access to Forex is an issue, and as somebody who owns a business and needing to survive, I jumped on a plane and I did what I had to do in order to have my business still survive? So with that example, we as entrepreneurs are going to continue pushing the envelope because we are seeing the opportunities. I'm seeing folks, we have businesses like Food Drop being able to tap into a space where it's the Uber of Trinidad, the Uber Eats of Trinidad. So with businesses like that, and it's actually being run by women, that's showing us that there is this plausibility of us going in the right direction. I'm just hoping that the public sector supports it. And I'm just going to leave it at that because this is a corporate channel.
Okay. We'll have to have an after-hours show then as well.
No.
So Ingrid, what's your opinion on the future?
As for me, I've always been bullish on the Caribbean. I've always been bullish on Caribbean entrepreneurs. I just believe Caribbean entrepreneurs will save our ass, frankly. And I think, when I say Caribbean entrepreneurs, I mean the women entrepreneurs. I mean the millennial entrepreneurs, the Gen X entrepreneurs, just entrepreneurs who are focused on changing the status quo, are reflecting what is and what is to come. Without question, as Michele said, that they're, whether it is legislatively, whether it is politically, whether through certain legacy businesses, they are very aware that things are changing and changing very quickly. They're aware that, and they're not sure how to meet that, to strategize around it as yet. And so they're scared. And when you're scared in that, and when you're seeing your bottom line eroding, when you're seeing new competitors, when you're seeing you're losing power and influence in certain markets, there's going to be a tendency to block, shuffle, and tackle what is new. But I just believe that while that is always the case for entrepreneurship wherever it is in the world, I am very bullish on Caribbean entrepreneurs figuring it out, because I see what's been happening over the past 15 years in the startup scene across the region and the diaspora. I see the collaboration that is happening, internation across the region. I see what is happening with how we're collaborating with the diaspora. So I just have to remain bullish on the Caribbean entrepreneurs. At the same time, I urge Caribbean businesses that are open, that want to see the Caribbean thrive in different ways, because of course their business will thrive. I'm encouraging them to get more involved, roll up their sleeves and get more involved in educating people on different levels, whether it's their executives, whether it's it's more of their consumers, about what the possibilities are that are there. I'll give you an example before I shut up. National Commercial Bank is the largest bank network in Jamaica. Mm-hmm. And they just launched Link app, which is basically like a Venmo or Cash App or that kind of a thing. And so they said they were surprised that they had like over 30,000, I think now it's up to 100,000 downloads within. They thought they would have gotten that over maybe a year or two, but they got it in a matter of days and weeks. And I was like, surprised? Why are you surprised? First of all, the Link app is not something, that scenario is not new. That is something that a startup had approached the Bank of Jamaica like years ago, but it was shut down because they didn't understand it. And maybe the banking lobby got to them as well, right? But that's what I'm talking about in terms of the culture. That those 100,000 people, there's like, you know what? We know what this is about. We've been using it, like Paula, to get money. We've been using PayPal. We've been using Cash App. We've been using Venmo. All these things externally to get paid, so we can have our business. So why are you surprised? And so I just kind of want more businesses not to act surprised or to be surprised, but to embrace the fact that, and allow me with the digital consumers to lead them and to craft new services and to craft new products. And so that they as businesses can thrive, consumers can thrive, and the Caribbean economies can thrive. So as I said, I'm always very bullish on the Caribbean. I have to be, I love it. And I just believe that entrepreneurs or innovators will continue to do amazing things as they have been over the last couple of years.
Fantastic. That's a very positive message, so that's great to hear. So there's just a quick question here that I think is worth addressing from Jacqueline Morris, who's listening in, and maybe Michele, you can take this as well. But for me, when reading this, I can understand that the technology is moving so fast. Is there going to be a greater divide? So for me, that comes down to education. So Michele, do you think that the governments and the legislation and the education network within the region is equipped to start equipping our next generations with what they need to keep up with this technology change?
That's a good question. And I have my concerns. And I mean, I definitely think that Jacqueline's question is absolutely legitimate, because I do think that the digital divide is likely to widen just because of, one, the speed at which technology is advancing, and consequently, those who probably have a little bit more understanding of what's going on, just being able to keep up with that is a challenge for people who may consider themselves digitally savvy. So for those who are still newbies or haven't even gotten on that path as yet in any sort of meaningful way, I think that is going to be a challenge. And I think one of the things that and probably for policymakers in particular, that one is they need to probably be a little bit more aware of, is the fact that not because everybody has a mobile phone means that they're digitally literate or digitally savvy. And that, I think, is it has probably given us a sort of false sense of security. And I also know that across the region we have 2G and those sorts of technologies that are still quite prevalent, and so there is not necessarily the incentive for people. And granted that there are cost factors that need to also be considered, just in terms of the level of use that they get from their devices, or what then they potentially could demand. I mean, having just like a very simple mobile phone as opposed to a smartphone will make all the difference in terms of the things that you can do. But I think because everybody has a mobile device, and the fact that luckily the providers, I think, have been able to get their offer packages that allow for like mobile data and so on, and you have zero rated content and that sort of thing, we think that everything is okay. But a lot of people are not as digitally literate as they need to be in this day and age, and for what is coming. And so I am concerned about that. I certainly think, though, that, and again, I guess we may have to thank the pandemic for so many things, because even just in terms of online education and the digital education thrust, those, I think, really started to sort, in a way that perhaps had not been done before, is to give the education system greater exposure to the ways that they could be leveraging technology. And granted that I saw on something in the papers recently here in Jamaica about how, I guess, the technology thrust will continue in Jamaica, but I'm not so sure about that. We'll see how that is going to reveal itself over time. But I really think, though, that ultimately probably certainly in schools, that we cannot allow education to sort of revert to what it had been pre-pandemic, but really try to increase our use and integration of technology in the classroom, and more so at home. So, thinking about the connected learner as opposed to just doing stuff in school.
That's such a I just want to add one thing to that, because we had an event for the LinkedIn Local Caribbean with parents, and I find it was very interesting. It's actually led by Sarah. She's in the IT space as well, from Trinidad. And to hear the feedback from the parents, because there's this idea of, I'm going to take away the mobile phone. This is specifically moms. And there's this sense of, well, I am controlling the situation. And as Sarah rightfully said in that event, technology is not going anywhere. So I think it's important to mention that we need to learn about the technology and be part of the conversation with your children, because if you're taking away the technology and not allowing them to understand it and actually see a future, because that's where the jobs are going to be, then you're actually taking away opportunities from your child, basically. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, we are unbelievably coming up to the hour mark. So I have 1,000 more questions for all of you, and unfortunately we're out of time. So I think we're going to have to do this again. But maybe Pauline can have her job back because.
Yeah, it's a lot to juggle. It's a lot to juggle.
But if I can just drop a 10-second thing here, as I was just listening to everybody talk about that, I think maybe there's an opportunity in terms of that we need to maybe start curating and guiding people on different levels through audio, through video, through webinars, through reading. People have that. Some people who have access to the internet or they have access to the tools, but they don't know where to start. Where can I find all the educational stuff? Where can I find the stuff that has to do with crypto, whatever it is? Maybe there needs to be initiatives by us, by others who are listening, to create guides that can help both students, parents, teachers, other people. So maybe guides. Maybe that's an opportunity there.
Yeah, I think maybe we can have a full show on that too. I think in terms of just purely about resources, where to go.
Yeah.
Where to get the information.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much to the three of you, Pauline, Ingrid, Michele. Great conversation, lots of information. It's a shame that we have to stop it there, but thank you to everybody listening. Please spread the word. There's a lot of great information here. And until next time, we will see you then.